What moment during your flight training were you like, all right, I can't talk on the comms. I can't hear anything. I don't know what's going on. Was there a moment like when you were taxiing off or flying in the pattern that you're like, this is just too much?
Well, there actually saw a couple. The instructor let me start the engine, and he says, "Hey, you're gonna taxi, and see how it goes, and maybe I even let you take off." Right? I'm like, excited, and now we got a request, like taxi clearance from ground. I was like, "All right, how do I do it?" He was like, "No, no, no, I'll do it." He got on the radio, and after hearing, I'm like, "I have no idea what just happened." So I said, "Good call."
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the Aviator's Guide. I'm Hollie Bellino, your host as usual, and today with me I have a very special guest, Mr. Muharrem Mane. Mr. Muharrem Mane, thank you for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you on.
No, thank you, Holly, for taking time, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, I want to introduce Mr. Mane here for a moment. He is the CEO and co founder of this amazing application called Plane English ARSim that really just helps pilots learn how to speak on the communications on the radios while they're learning how to fly, which is actually one of the harder things to do when you're learning how to fly, besides learning how to land the plane itself. So that's amazing. It's been used on the civilian side as well as the military side. And in addition to that, he also has a strong fervor for knowledge, as he has a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degree, and a PhD, all in the field of engineering, specifically astronautical and aeronautical engineering, as well as civil engineering. So he's a smart cookie. And he also knows how to rock a good tan colored shirt. Y'all can't see it if you're listening to the podcast, but he pulls it off pretty well. He's from Albania, is a father and a husband, and also, of course, a pilot, which is how he came around to making this app in the first place. Did I get all that right there, sir?
On point.
Perfect. So before we dive into Plain English and ARSim today, I just want to get to know you a little bit. I'm sure the viewers are interested as well to get to know your history and your story. So I know that you grew up in Albania, the People's Socialist Republic of Albania, correct? So what was that like for you growing up there as a child?
I was 11 when I left, so I got to experience that kind of political system, I guess, all the way up to age 11. So I've got obviously memories and some of what that was like in there, but I was still quite young. I mean, it's all memories as a kid, right? So you're not, for the most part, you're not aware of all the other bigger realities and issues. And from my perspective, I mean, as a kid, it was great. We had lived in a city, relatively small neighborhood. Uh, there were not many cars around, so kids could like run around in all the streets and do whatever we wanted, and it was a pretty chill kind of environment from that perspective. It was nice, but again, from that kid perspective and unaware of other
All
things.
the issues going on.
And things that you
Absolutely.
realize later, like, oh, that was really different.
You're like, wow, that wasn't as magical as I remember it was being a kid. There's actually things going on in Albania.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But I left. I left at age 11 in 1992. Spent some time in Italy for about, I think it was 5 to 6 years. Lived there, went to school there, and then came to the U.S. in '97. And I've been here as a like exchange student, international student, and and then college and all that stuff after that. And then yeah, after high school I was interested in aviation, and when I asked my host family, where do you go to study aviation, and they said they go to Purdue. I was living, my high school is in Indiana, and they said you go to Purdue, so that was the only place where I applied, and I got accepted, so I went to Purdue.
Well, that's amazing. I hear it's a very good school. So that seems like a good place to go. So you said you lived in Italy for a few years studying there. That's pretty cool. What drew you over to Italy?
Well, it was a little bit kind of like the consequences of Albania, and kind of like the government and the regime changing there. So it was, after the Berlin Wall came down in, like '89. So there was that 1991. There was that transition, like of all the kind of like Eastern Europe, the transition of the political system. So my family, my father left Albania to go to Italy in 1991
Okay.
because you could, and it was that, I don't know if it was forced, but migration, I guess. Kind of like getting away from the whole situation in Albania. So, and then in '92, myself and the rest of my family moved to Italy.
Well, did you enjoy your time there?
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, again, it was part of, you're changing, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes it's not always good, and you had friends, and like a way that you do things. So there was of course that initial shock of just being in a different place, new place, not knowing the language, just dealing with all that. But yeah, eventually you get used to it. I like being there. Yeah, I spent 6 years there, and I've been my parents still live there, so I get to go back, and it's very nice. It's a familiar place to go back to. I know the language now, so it's very nice.
I did see that. I see that you speak not only Albanian and Italian, but English and a little bit of Spanish too. So that's pretty cool. I've been to Italy myself. I haven't been able to live there for 6 years, but I lived there for 1 year during study abroad, and I fell in love with it. So I also entered in Italy, different circumstances than you did. So I initially was just obsessed with the country, the food, the culture, the people. Just, it's my favorite country I've been to. My Italian's a little bit rusty, but I can say a few things. But non ho mai praticato italiano. Non posso mai. Perché non c'è una persona.
È vero.
There's no one here that I can speak it with, but I do have some friends over there. I need to reach out to. It's been a while, so I usually go on a Chat GPT to practice my Italian every now and then. I'd be like, talk to me in Italian. Dimmi solo parlo in italiano.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Do you ever get to practice your Italian or Albanian anymore?
Oh, yes. So I've obviously, so go back. I still have family in Albania, so get to go back, and then I speak it at home with my daughter. So she knows the language, and she's pretty good at it. And then I get to go to Italy as well to visit my parents. So yeah, get to practice that Italian. I put it into use actually while I was going through graduate school. So I taught Italian in college. So I've
Oh, perfect.
all that initial like learning it. Yeah, I've gotten to practice, and I've got quite a few friends that I keep in touch with, and it's there. It hasn't gone away.
Oh, sono gelosa. I'm jealous. I love that you taught your daughter Albanian though. I love when people pass on their cultural language to their kids. I'm definitely going to pass on my fake cultural language of Italian to my kids someday. Like,
And
I'm not actually Italian, but I want to be.
it's good that they tend to pick that stuff up very, very easily when they're little. So it seems like a awesome opportunity. So where in Italy did you spend your study abroad here?
I was in Torino, or Turin in English, where your parents live in.
So I spent 5 years down south of Italy. So if you think of Italy, the heel, Lecce, it's kind of like the southernmost, like city there. Spent
Okay.
5 years there. Amazing weather, warm, and all that stuff. And then spent about 6 months in Milan, and that's where my parents live now.
I really love Milan. It's really fun to say Milano. But it was just 2 hours north of where I was living, so I went there a few times. It's a very nice city. I enjoyed it a lot. Well, after you've gotten to where you are today, all this success, all this knowledge that you've accumulated over the years, if you went back to Albania and you saw your 10, 11-year-old self, what do you think he would say to you about where you're at today?
Oh man. Oh, that sounds like one of those questions that I should have thought about, but
How did you not know I was going to ask that?
no, I don't know. Keep at it, I guess. Which
Keep
maybe
going.
it's not going to change anything. We'll just keep going.
Okay, okay, that's fair. What about if you saw your childhood self at 11, 10? What would you say to him for some advice?
Probably try to head off some of those, the not so positive, kind of like thoughts and things that come when things are changing, right? So just everything changes. So everything is transitory. So it's okay.
Like, hey, life's gonna get hard, it's gonna change, but you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be
All
doing
right.
very well in the future. So you decided to go into aviation. What drew you into going into that field? Is it the first time you got on a plane, or what was it exactly?
Well, I mean, have you seen airplanes, right? I mean, it's just what's not to like. I don't know. It was just something. It was just airplanes. I remember even before early in high school, I just fascinated, just like looking at them and kind of like knowing how like the amazing fact that they can fly, just metal flying in the air, and it was just fascinating. When I was in the U.S. as an exchange student in high school, I had the opportunity to go down to Cape Canaveral in Florida, so got to see like the shuttle stuff there. We went on that bus tour when you're going to the launch pads. It was just amazing, and I said, well, I mean, if I have to study something, I knew it was going to be some sort of engineering anyways. I said, well, might as well just study this one. This seems to be the coolest one. So if you have to spend a lot of time doing something, if you can help it and let it be something that you like, it makes it a little bit easier. So
Absolutely. Whenever I get called for a trip for work, I just get so excited. I'm like, oh, I get to go fly tomorrow. So it's nice to look forward to going to work. It's not like, oh, I gotta go to work. So it's definitely a burden off your soul to get to enjoy what you're doing and feel very lucky. Have you ever come across a challenge that made you kind of second guess your career choice of going to aviation and engineering in general?
well, probably. I mean, I know. Well, when you read off some of the kind of like some of my background, so aviation was something that I always liked. Wanted to go in aviation. When I was going through undergraduate, so getting my undergraduate degree, I was an international student. So part of that came to the realization about halfway through, when it's time to, I'm going to go and try to find an internship. You're thinking, hey, what do I know? I'm going to go and apply to NASA, right? I mean, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. You got to be at least like a resident or a citizen. So there are all these kind of like, like barriers in there, which, um, you realize, and it's like, okay, so maybe that's not going to happen. So like a lot of things has to change before that happens. So that was like affected, like even within aviation, my undergrad, you have to choose a specialty. So you could choose, and I thought propulsion was the coolest thing, right? Just rockets and get to see things blow up. But then, well, what do you do with that afterwards? So it's going to be either one of the companies that builds those rockets or NASA or something. So, well, the chances of me going there are pretty probably slim, like at the moment. So I chose to, like specialize in structures. So like aircraft and, and spacecraft structures, which was more kind of how you build them. And my thinking was, well, I mean, an aircraft wing, it's kind of like a bridge anyways, right? So maybe if I can't do this, I can go build bridges or, or roads or something. So there was some overlap with some of my studies into civil engineering and transportation engineering, that maybe it was me being risk averse and hedging my bets a little bit, but so that was something that had an impact there for sure.
I could see that. Being risk averse is, just trying to find ways to make sure it's going to work out somewhere, somehow. I think that's why I went to school for international business management marketing. Like, what kid dreams of being a marketing agent or a business major? But I chose it because I didn't know what else to do and I didn't even use it. So here we are. Never even needed it. But clearly you use yours. So is your end goal still to go to NASA? Is that still what you want to do?
Well, now there are other companies doing that sort of thing. Maybe not as much. Being in the industry and like aviation in general, it's been neat. I mean, there are a lot of things that like are happening that don't have to do with rockets, right? With all the drone stuff, or like automation and like advanced air mobility and all this. I mean, there's so many things in the industry anyway, so it's still a lot of neat stuff.
Oh, yes, there is a lot of neat stuff. And there's so many facets of aviation that I don't think people even think about. Especially when it comes to piloting, a lot of pilots that are going through flight school, most of them just think airlines. That's they don't even know what else there is out there. So it's the same thing for just being in the background and all the science that comes into aviation. There's so much that you can do. And so now you're working at Pegasus, right?
It is one of my, so besides, play like plain English that takes up a lot of my time. Yeah, I serve as the associate director of Pegasus, which is the FAA Center of Excellence for General Aviation. So I get to help the management of some of the research there. So it's a consortium of 6 universities, that do general aviation related research. So I get to do that. I get to work with some graduate students, and yeah.
Do you enjoy that more or less than working on plain English?
Oh man, see what kind of questions you ask.
It's a trap.
No, I mean it's different, but that's the nice thing of it, right? So it just has different things. It's research, so you're getting to do these things that are a little bit. I mean, all of them are tangible, but a little bit more out there, right? So it's a different pace, like different kind of questions that you get to think about. So it's different, and I think that's what makes it nice.
If you had to choose one to stick with, what would it be?
Oh man. Well, I like the level of control, I guess, and inputs and say that I have in what plain English is doing. So that one gives me more flexibility to maybe do some of the things that we're talking while doing research to be able to do them here. So you'll probably have to be plain English.
I would probably do the same thing too. It's always more fun to work for yourself too because you have more control over your life and your business and everything. You got your pilot's license in 2010, your private pilot's license, and you
Correct.
said the last time you flew was a couple years ago.
I think it has been a couple of years now. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, it's time to get back up there.
Got it. I mean, and even before that, I've been working the last year. It's been trying to get my instrument rating. So that was a lot of flying, a lot of time under the hood, and trying to make time to get those cross country hours. But no, I'm definitely looking, trying to find time for it.
I feel you. I had a lot of when I was a flight instructor, primarily, was my main gig. A lot of my students or clients, we called them, were business owners. So they were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they had families and a full time business. So I know it's really difficult to get them out there in the plane to finish those dreams because it is a dream and a goal, but it's hard to make time for it. But I'm sure you'll get your instrument rating soon. I bet you'll get it done really fast too.
I got to find time to get that theoretical kind of exam, and that one is good for 2 years. So I just got to make sure I get that one done, and then find those. I think I can, like about a week or two, knock it out. But then it'll be the challenge afterwards. You got to keep it up. So
Yes, you do have to keep it up, but it really isn't as hard as it seems to keep it up to be current. It's really, just the six approaches in the last 6 months and then intercepting and tracking and using navigational aids and the holds and procedures. So it's not that bad. And then really you have another 6 months after that 6 months to still get it done before you have to do an IPC. You just have to take a safety pilot with you on those next 6 months.
yeah.
So it's not too bad. I bet you could do it. I have faith in you.
Thank you. Thank you. My goal in that has been, I mean, obviously, doing, like getting the instrument, but it's just, I'd love to be able to get in that comfort, like with my, level of proficiency. I know it's not going to be like treated like a car, right? But get to that level. So I'm not even looking at those, the 6 months. And because it's still, if you're doing the bare minimum, I still find myself being uncomfortable, going out and doing everything safely and being able to calm down again. So
Well, that is a very good thought process to have about it because you definitely do want to be proficient, like you said. A lot of people just think about current, but the fact that you remember proficiency is very important is also good. And
right.
yeah, it probably takes maybe 1 or 2 times a week to get to that level, just so you feel more comfortable in the aircraft. But also depends on the aircraft, which one you're flying. If it's the same one or a different aircraft, that can also change that as well. Have you thought about buying one?
Not at the moment. No, it's been just probably a big chunk of it. Like the infrequency with which I'm doing it. It doesn't it doesn't quite make sense yet. So
That's
uh,
fair.
renting one, it's okay for now.
So, when you decided that you wanted to make the Plain English ARSim app, what moment during your flight training were you like, "All right, this is it. This is ridiculous. I can't talk on the comms. I can't hear anything. I don't know what's going on. Can I ever do this? Am I ever going to be able to get my license?" Was there a moment like when you were taxing off or flying in the pattern that you're like, "This is just too much"?
Well, there actually saw a couple. So there was the initial one that I just remember, like vividly, and maybe because I've said it to myself so many times since. But so I got in, that first flight with the instructor. We did the pre-flight, like outside the airplane, inside the airplane. The instructor let me start the engine, and he said, "Hey, you're gonna taxi, like and see how it goes, and maybe I even let you take off." Right? I'm like, excited, and now we got a request, like taxi clearance from ground. I was like, all right, how do I do it? He was like, no, 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 I'll do it. And I'm like, wait a minute. And like, you let me fly, drive the airplane around, but you're not gonna let me do this. And then so he got on the radio, did that, and after hearing, I'm like, I have no idea what just happened. So I said, good call. So that was kind of like the first thing that it was, like I was okay to mess with the airplane, but not talk to ground. And then after that, it was a continued thing every time, right? So the instructor made it a point, hey, you are going to do these. So we spent, after starting the engine, getting the 80s, being ready, just okay, rehearse it. I literally would just rehearse them, like a couple times. Okay, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say this, press the mic, get your typical brain freeze, like what was it I'm supposed to say? And then as we kind of like I did it, so one of my partners in Plane English, Aaron Hadimioglu, he was doing the flight training at the same time, and so we used a handheld radio, so we spent some time just listening to tower and ground, just get like some practice listening to this stuff. And that's when we kind of the two of us thought, hey, there's got to be a better way of doing this. So again, listening, it was passive, right? We didn't get to practice. When you get on the airplane, yeah, you're doing it with the instructor. It's taking time. I'm really nervous doing it because my mind is going in 100 different places. So we started kind of like sketching out and saying, how would we do this, what it would look like. So it was a few years kind of like playing around with the idea. And then it was in 2018, between the two of us, Aaron and myself, we knew what we wanted the tool to look like, what we wanted to do, but none of us like had the skills to actually make it happen. So we convinced Sam Dixon, who has a like background in like software. He's a computer science guy, also from Purdue. So we talked him into it, and he was like, "Sure, I'll give it. We'll give it a try." So it was the three of us, and so we managed, like, kind of relatively quickly. And in 2019, we released the first version of ARSim for Android. And then so both Aaron and I were pilots. We already had our pilot's license, like everything. Sam didn't know anything about aviation, so he's a private pilot now, instrument rated, and about to do his check ride for a commercial. So he went beyond the both of us. So we talked him into aviation. So that's kind of neat too.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to talk someone into aviation.
Yeah,
There's that saying where you or like take him flying with you, he broke for a day, teach a man how to fly, he broke for the rest of his life kind of thing. Like yeah,
yeah.
so poor Sam, y'all just ruined him. He's probably broke now like the rest of us. So, after getting your license. And I totally get what you mean. Like even me being English is my native language. So I struggled with comms initially as well, all the way up through instrument training. So I did the same thing you did. I would sit there and I would verbally say out loud what I was going to say on the comms. Like, okay, holding short of this, airplane this, we're going to go here. And I would do it every time, private through instrument. And then for my instrument check ride, my DPE, he goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm practicing the my call. And he was like, you know what to say." And I was like, "Okay." And I stopped. From then on out, I was like, "I know what to say. I can do this."
He gave you the final confidence push, huh?
Yeah. I first heard about plain English from a student of mine whose native language is Chinese. And so I was teaching him instrument first training, and he told me about it. He was like, "Have you heard of plain English?" And I said, "No, I haven't." So he showed me and walked through it, and I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." And it helped him immensely. And he passed his instrument check ride a few months ago too. So, and that's because the comms were the hardest part for him. He's a great pilot. He knows what he's doing. The comms were where he struggled with the most. He's in his 50s, been in America for a very long time, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not. So I think it's very good that the app that you made.
Awesome to hear.
You've been in the aviation industry for quite some time, from learning how to fly to developing the app and working in aeronautical and astronautical engineering. What have you seen change in aviation the most?
I think it's a little bit, so my, like most of the non plain English related things that I've done and that I'm involved with, like have to do with, like how aircraft perform, cost, fuel burn, like environmental impact, and that sort of stuff. So it's been kind of like that steady improvement of what you can get out of those aircraft, like how efficient they are, how they get used by their owners. Like I've been kind of like involved, not only looking at how airlines use them, but even current this on demand kind of a transportation. We did like quite a few studies a few years ago looking at air taxis. It's like, how would you run an air taxi business, with using either small like Cessnas or Pipers, or small business jet like the Cessna Mustang, right? Those, or the back in the day with the Eclipse 500, there was this newest cheap, like four-seater jet. So like seeing those kind of like around the, not just the business cases, but like operations, right? How do you use this, these resources? And then, like with that, it's just been the level of automation that I think, I mean, we see it in the, like the drones that everybody can access, right? I mean, I remember being in labs and having these, things, quad motor things that were so cool, like they're everywhere now, right? And I know it's not from a pilot, like it's different because, like the way that, they pilot and they fly, it's different, but still just seeing them around everywhere. And recently the discussions about how do you scale those up, and they carry people, like one, two, three, four people, like with like advanced, how is it called, urban air mobility or advanced air mobility, and thinking about a future where they're, they might be flying around. I think those are, still coming, but like very neat kind of a, I don't know, your typical flying car future kind of a thing. Yeah, and then I mean, from the more on like on the plain English, side is just, like on the pilot training, it's been the use of simulators and virtual reality, extended reality, kind of tools that are coming out. We've been, working with Plain English, fortunate and lucky, to work with the Air Force. And so seeing some of the systems that they're using, and that are, they have a little bit more flexibility regulation wise, to experiment and play around with those. So seeing what things look like, it's really neat, to see how that is, how it's progressing. And it sounds like there are discussions about some of that coming into the civilian side, and getting some of those, like devices and systems certified, to use for pilot training, which is, it's really neat.
It is really neat. There's so much changing, and you're right about the air taxi thing and seeing how air, like personal private air travel has boomed, especially since COVID in 2020, where the airlines were struggling. Private jets were just taking off, pun intended, and it was just super popular. Talking about your Plain English app, what is one of your favorite features that you've put into the app based on everything that you've learned in aviation?
We've had quite a few, like recent ones. The app itself is designed so to provide you kind of like the ability to learn through practice, right? Not, like repetition, not necessarily memorization. So there is information, there is things always changed in any scenario that you're doing. So if you're in the air, you're going to do a flight following, thing. You press the mic, you speak into the mic, like it scores what you're saying, gives you immediate feedback. You get to hear, like center, whoever you're talking to, give you those instructions. You read them back, so you do that entire dance. So what we've added within the spirit of trying to keep you focused on communications, right? So it's by design, you're not flying the airplane, right? So you're not spending time, well, what do I do, which way do I turn the throttle, maintain speed, altitude. So it's just communication. So adding like the visuals and providing the situational awareness, that you need to just communicate. So that's been, so it was a feature that we added about a little over a year ago. But to be able to see the flight displays, that was kind of neat. So being able to see, okay, I'm about to do this flight following, but I have to actually read, like, oh, what altitude am I in, which way am I flying, how far from the airport am I. So picking out the pieces of information that you need in order to communicate. So, because it adds a little bit of realism from the kind of like you managing kind of like your brain, right? You know what you're doing. And so I think that one has been neat. And then, so the tool is designed again to have you practice these scenarios. And then beyond that, we have our cross country flight mode in the tool, which lets you pick an origin, a destination, and then it just builds in an itinerary. So basically, you're doing, like, yeah, I'm going from, I don't know, Lafayette to Champaign, and then you're doing your taxi out, you're doing your takeoff, first flight following, and do the approach when you get there, and do the landing and the taxiing. So like you get to experience your flight, but from a radio communications perspective. It's like chair flying your comms, right? That's what I did. I didn't have the money or anything to have like a simulator to just, like practice flying while I wasn't on the airplane, while I was doing my, like my training. And you just do that chair flying, chair flying. But so it's a little bit of more advanced and modern chair flying for communication. So I think that one is a neat one.
That's what I was exactly thinking, is that it's just like chair flying. And chair flying is one of the most underrated ways you can practice flying. It's people just want to be in the plane or they want to be in a simulator. And I'm like, you can literally sit in a chair, close your eyes, and do the same thing. The only thing that you can't do is if you don't memorize where all the switches and buttons are, that may be difficult, but you can pull up a picture in front of you or something so you can at least reference that. But chair flying is super helpful. And that's exactly what this app I feel like is doing. It's helping you do everything without the stress of being in the plane, without the stress of having to look at the throttle setting and making sure you are turning base not too soon or whatever it may be. As helpful as it may be to go to a untowered airport and call out every single leg of your pattern, it's helpful to know kind of what you're saying first before you get the added stress and then you're losing altitude or gaining airspeed, whatever it may be. So it really helps you get one aspect down of piloting. So I think it's amazing in that way. That is one way I would make my students train on the comms, because everyone struggles with it. Every student I've had has struggled with the communications, even if they're an instrument. Because it's when you go to instrument from private pilot, there's new things you have to say, new things you have to listen for, and you have to know when to question things. Like if they tell you to, if you're on a 090 heading and they tell you to make a left turn to 180, you should be like, do you mean a right turn to 180? Like you just little things like that, that is like the peak of learning the comms, is hearing things like that, registering it, that it could be wrong. And they mess up sometimes. We all mess up. So I think it's an amazing app. And are there any other features you've been thinking about adding that are going to be coming out that we can be excited about?
So the tool comes with a built-in training curriculum. You can start again, no instructor, no airplane, just start from level one. And how do I say the phonetic alphabet? Like from there all the way to doing, like instrument approaches. It kind of guides you. And then aside from that, we have places where you can get more in depth about, like flight following or like flight plan activation, or just VFR instrument approaches. And then we've made three units. So one of them, it's our pattern unit. So it's designed to do just pattern at non-towered airports. What this one does is, we've built some capabilities, not just voice-based interaction, but like through the visuals and touching the screen. So what that one does is actually you can look at it and say, hey, this is a left pattern. This is what this is what the legs are called, and this is where you make this call. So it kind of like it's instructing you and then quizzing you, testing you. Hey, if the airplane is here, is that departure or is that base or is that like whatever the case might be. And then obviously they get to you get to do the call outs when you can see the airplane move, and then you have to press the mic and do that thing. We have a cool one there again as part of the pattern, that situational awareness, a different way of testing the pilots when we have like three or four airplanes are flying on the same airport, and they make radio calls, so you have to identify who made the call just by the position, right? So like, are you kind of like understanding what's happening here? This brings in again voice interaction with kind of like this touch interactivity. We have an airport unit. So this one, there is no speaking parts to this. It's only just presenting you information and then quizzing you, but it does signs, lights, and markings, which was, I don't know, maybe I should feel ashamed, but like nobody told me that stuff while I was doing my private pilot's license. It was like okay, I kind of like feel like okay, I learned it because I was there, but it seems like it never came up. I don't know, maybe I missed it. I don't remember it. I got nothing. Like it's not. I don't remember doing it. So we provide this. Like again, just walking. Hey, these are the signs, right? Like taxiway signs, runway signs, all the light, stuff. We just added a couple of days ago the light gun signals. You just have flashing lights and you have to identify them. So that one is a neat one. And that one, it's actually, so we provide it for free. So anybody that downloads the app, that one is available for anybody to do. And then we're talking about instruments. So we have a unit built on instrument holds where we try to go a little bit into the concepts, like these are kind of like the hold patterns. These are the entries. So you have to recognize them, kind of like build that mental model about what is happening, and then add communications on top of that are kind of neat. And the final one, so we have kind of like an AI enabled feature in the tool. It's kind of like using some of the AI providers out there, but with our own twist to it, where you can ask it, I don't know, like you're online using like ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, but you can ask it anything about aviation, and it kind of gives you, kind of like those nice, like answers and information. But we've had it coupled with actual documentation, so related to communications about So the FAA, like AIM, JO 7110, some of the EASA and ICAO based, like procedures and phraseologies. So you can ask him questions about, hey, how do you do this, like if you're in Canada or the UK or whatever, and it gives you, the answers, but also the reference about the actual document where it came from. So it's a little bit more authoritative into like, oh, I can find it here if I wanted to look it for myself. Yeah, that's kind of our latest. And then we have couple more things that we're a little bit a few months away from releasing. So I'm gonna hold back on those till
Now
then.
you can
But
give us the juice.
we got some exciting ones in there that we're excited about.
Well,
Uh,
that's awesome. I have looked into the app. I never used it personally because I didn't know about it when I was in flight school, but I was looking into it. And I really liked the pattern stuff where you have to actually pick the airplane that's on base, on downwinds, on the departure leg, all that stuff. That's really nice. And I was practicing saying the comms, and I was getting like 80, 90%. And I was like, so I went in and I used my Siri voice. I tried to sound like my plane. I call the avionics in my plane Kendra whenever she tells me something like minimums. And so I just did that instead. I was like 14,500, and I got 100%. I was like, yes. So if I do yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's one of the fun. I mean, we're using so part of it. I mean, we're using like computers and AI here to try and help with it. It makes it accessible, right? It makes it fast, but at the same time, and it's not a person, right? So there is
Right.
that. It's still computer and it's algorithms that are trying to understand you. So in some regards, there are those, like a small percentage of the time, and it's not going to get it right. But we have quite a bit of experience with instructors and some of the labs, that use it, where it does require for some pilots to change how they speak, because yeah, like a person can understand you, but like not every person can understand you.
That's
So
true. But it's a really cool app. I really enjoyed looking through it. You use AI a lot for that. What do you see for the future of AI when it comes to aviation?
I think uh, there are clear uses of it. Well, from what we see, even that experience that we've had so far, is that the logic of them needs to be a lot more robust, right? I mean, you can have, I know, probably the typical, like experience that you had. You ask, ChatGPT or Gemini, something. It can provide an answer. It sounds really awesome, right? It will write it better than I can write it. But on some things where logic is involved, right, it can struggle. So I think, being able to follow more on those logical paths, or I think it's where my experience, where the kind of like the higher utility, like of them will be. Like you can imagine, I don't know, some AI based system trying to manage, like an airspace with aircraft, right? So I mean, the level, just because of the risk involved and the level of confidence that you have to have in the system, would have to be really high. But it's something you can see it work at, right? And you can see applications to that. So I think there are, like different places anywhere, but aiding in the cockpit, like how do you do, like if you're getting these, transcriptions of, whatever you're saying, be able to see a transcript on your, like iPad or whatever system you're using. We know, I mean, I know of research that's happening, that has to do with PIREPs. So how do you, if you have to do a PIREP, how can you just speak freely and have that structured in such a way that it will go out, like, and be well formatted, and like with the right information. So having it help, with those things, definitely, I mean, I can see them, I can see it be useful. There are many things out there. I think in training for sure, like applications, right? I mean, we use some version of it, but there are many kind of like virtual instructors, that are beginning to use it. The environment, it's less you're training. Even if there are mistakes, it's different, right? You're not, dropping out of the sky, because the AI did something, but so helping with, like how do you progress through training, right? How do you analyze some of the data? What is the next, like step in your personalized training that makes more sense to keep up with, like how you're progressing? I think there are a lot of applications there to help with that. Call it some version of competency based, or like personalized training. They seem to be really interesting, neat, and be, yeah, cool to see as they
Yeah,
roll
those
out.
are a lot of really good points. One thing that makes me think about is have you heard about Airbus trying to make a single pilot cockpit for commercial flights?
I had not, but what have you? What's the take on it? I guess.
Well, I guess it depends on the person. Everyone's got to play the devil's advocate, but I'm not going to do that today because I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it could be disastrous. And I know that some people are all for it, especially the airliners themselves, because yes, it'll save them a pretty penny having one pilot in there instead of two salaries. Apparently, the person that there will be a second pilot, but virtually on the
Mm.
ground, controlling more than one aircraft, being a co pilot for more than one aircraft. And I just see maybe one day in the very far future we could be there, but right now it just sounds like a really bad idea because having two pilots up in that cockpit is probably the cheapest insurance you could ever ask for. It's yes, you can fly the plane in a nice VFR day, like nothing goes wrong. It's fine. Like every pilot's a good pilot when there's not an emergency, right? Generally, not every pilot, but most of us know can just handle the day to day. But whenever it comes to an emergency, you're gonna want someone there to help you. And so I don't think how the citizens of the world are going to feel about flying in an aircraft with only one pilot up there flying 200 plus people around the country. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean those are all like fair points, especially the kind of like the aspect of kind of like normal routine kind of like operations versus when you're running into those uh, emergency or just more messy, like flight, right? Yeah, having that second eyes, I mean, second everything, right? It is just it's critical. So I think yeah, that's definitely something that I mean, I'm hoping that whoever is thinking about this stuff, it's kind of like right up there, like at the top of the list of things to address. I think probably the perception and and the insurance of it, it might be one of those showstoppers anyways, right? If you can find somebody to insure you, if you got one, even if it's technically possible, it might just stop it. But yeah, the people like public, like passengers perception, I'm sure is going to be a huge part of it, even if like I don't know, nobody sees the cockpit nowadays, right? And so how many people you have in there, but just knowing about it. I mean, right now, for example, if you go, fly, pick your airline, even like regionally, you don't see many propeller airplanes, right? I mean, there used to be a lot more of them, like in the early 2000s. I mean, if you look at them, they're cheaper to operate, right? Like a lot cheaper to operate, but I'm sure there are many reasons, but I know that one of them is just that perception. I mean, you had people that if they had a choice, be like, "I'm not flying on that thing when I can see that blade just spinning." And no matter that you got a lot more of them blades spinning in the other engine, but they're just you can't see them, right? But it's just something that like affects how people see things. So yeah, I'm sure there's an aspect of that that's going to be, I guess, under the acceptance level if people have a choice. I mean, on some things you just fly the airplane that they put on the route, right? You don't get to choose anyways. But
Exactly. So, being where you are today, what kind of advice you would have for anybody else who's trying to be an entrepreneur when it comes to aviation tech or aviation engineering? What's something that you would tell them to help them get to where they want to be?
what I've seen in my experience, many things seem to be slow in aviation for better or for worse. So probably patience. It's the biggest advice. So there are many new things like out there that people want to introduce and want to do, but it seems that like aviation has its own pace of how it adopts things and like how they are accepted. So keeping at it and being patient, it's probably kind of like the biggest factor that I see. That's been my experience.
Just be patient and pay attention to what's going on, basically. Because I feel like that's one thing if you want to stay in aviation and progress in aviation, you kind of need to be following up on some kind of aviation news, whether that's just on Instagram or an actual signing up for an email subscription or a magazine, whatever it is, just kind of following up with the world if you want to stay in it, if you want to have a career in it. It's really good to know.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. So you tend to notice, hey, things are slowing down. It might take longer to get your check rides, right? Because depending on areas of the country, like DPEs, like are short, right? And it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
schedule DPEs, so you get a little bit of that type of information. This AFM.aero is an aggregation of it's just like worldwide flight schools.
Okay.
well, flight schools and airlines, right? Because it's mostly like academies that feed airlines, so you get a sense of all like there's a lot of activity, like a lot of like airplanes being delivered, like everywhere, right? And they provide some of the numbers. They're like, hey, there are so many new pilots, like that are like expected, and this airline is waiting for orders, like this many orders. So it gives you a little bit of a picture of like, oh yeah, this is there's stuff happening, things are growing, there's the demand is there. So maybe it might not give you like kind of like actionable what do I do like for my decision that I have to do next year, but maybe a little bit of a background that eh, I'm I'm in the right place, kind of a thing. Or like maybe I should be looking somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, that's fair. As long as, I mean, it's always good to just keep up with something, you know. Doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did see that. Didn't the Air Force provide some funding for you guys when you were making Plain English?
Yeah, since 2020, we took advantage of the SBIR, so Small Business and Innovation research. So we applied for those, and we went through the like phases and different level of funding. But we did phase one, two, three. So yeah, we've been working with the Air Force since 2020. So
Wow.
we were able to get like funding, which was to develop and build more capabilities, like for the tool. And because when we first launched in 2019, all we're doing was VFR communications, and then we just had our phases of flight kind of like training. And then since getting that help, it expanded to IFR, trainer module, iOS, web version. We have a dashboard for schools and institutions to monitor how the students are doing. So yeah, it's helped us kind of like build our capabilities as well as build training content specific to the Air Force. I haven't flown in those, how those guys fly, but kind of like seen, and we've been able to kind of like build the scenarios, and it's just crazy how they fly. It's really like non-towered airports, and they got like 20 airplanes in the air at one time.
Insane.
So it's kind of like building the scenarios and the training for them. It's been neat. But yeah, we've had their support, and it's transition. So we started kind of like the development funding, and then for the past 2+ years it's been we just deliver the product, contract licenses, like to some of the training units, including, which was kind of neat, we got one last year, trained boom operators for tanker aircraft.
Oh, cool.
Have some of the visual, like kind of like what they see outside of the window, so they get to talk to, so they're the ones being evaluated, the boom operators, but they're getting to talk to the pilots flying the airplane, and they're talking to the receiver aircraft that's going to receive the fuel, and they're also talking to center. So it's like this multi people, I guess, or entities interactions. That one has been kind of neat to do that.
Yeah.
Really,
Kinda.
really different, right? Different lingo, and so yeah.
Wow, okay. Well, speaking of the Air Force, you how was volunteering for the Civil Air Patrol? You did that for a while.
Yeah, I did that. It was, let me see. So I did it when, well, I tried to do it in Lafayette. I want to do like I want to get on the airplane, I want to fly, but when I was doing it in Lafayette, I don't think they had any airplanes. It was just kind of like on the fringes of it. And then when I lived in Pittsburgh, so I did that. It might have been like at least maybe a couple of years. So it was neat. I was part of, again, I wasn't doing any of the flying. I didn't have enough hours, but I was part of their aviation education. I was an aviation education officer, and it was neat. We got to meet like every week. We provided, I gave. I mean, I don't want to call it lectures because a lot of them were kids, but we're just pick aviation topics. So we'd have little presentations, little experiments with the cadets, like every week. So it was really neat, and you got to get them excited about aviation. Spend telling them about jobs in aviation, and get to spend some of the cool like sciencey stuff about you can blow in a straw and you put a paper in there and you can see low pressure that makes it like give lift and that kind of stuff. So it was it was neat. But yeah, I got to do that for a couple of years in Pittsburgh.
I've actually been looking into Civil Air Patrol just to go check it out because we have a squadron over here, not too far from me in Denton,
Hmm.
and it seems like a really good opportunity just to kind of get more involved in aviation and to help out the next generation of pilots. So I think that'd be pretty cool to get into that. Do you have any advice for anybody else who wants to start flight training that maybe be struggling with a language barrier like you did?
I mean, I think, well, part of it, it's like with everything that you do, like it's that persistence. some things are, like learning how to fly. It's not easy, right? There are many things that, depending on your situation, that will make it hard for you, be it schedule, the money, the whatever, right? But having that persistence is always good. And then, yeah, when it comes to the actual learning or whatever, I mean, we're hoping that what we provide with ARSim, it's a little bit of extra help for everybody to be able to get more comfortable and confident and be able to enjoy the rest of flying and the rest of flight training. And then, yeah, I mean, the rest is, it's really that, keep positive. Keep a positive attitude as you're doing it. There are, like some days that are not good when you're flying. It's just because, things are hard, and you feel like the airplane doesn't want to do what you want it to do. And uh,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. I mean, I think that's, hopefully you get, I think, lucky enough with, like the flight school, that you have an instructor, right? Both being, like accommodating and being good, right? Like somebody that enjoys doing it, and you're getting, that good training. And if you have the ability to compress the time, it's always better. I found out I had to take breaks like a couple of times, and you just spend time just reviewing things, right? So if you keep at it, it's in the long, for whatever the duration is, it's going to really be faster and cheaper, uh, just because you want to spend time reviewing things, right? Things will.
Absolutely. That's very good advice. Make sure that you don't take too long of breaks. Like, yes, take a break, but make sure you stay at it, because that's why I always told my students too, is the more time that goes between you flying, the longer it's going to take you to finish. The slower you're going to progress, So that's definitely a good one. I think one thing a lot of newer students need to remember when they're starting flight training is to don't compare yourself to others. Like, I get questions all the time. How long did it take someone to finish their private pilot? How many hours? How many months? How many practices of your cross country trip did you do before you got to go do it? It doesn't matter how long it took me, how long it took Joe, how long it took like Sarah. It doesn't matter. It matters about how you are progressing. Are you progressing? It is, don't compare yourself to somebody else. Some people are natural flyers that just get in the plane and it's sickening, but it's amazing. Like, they're just so good at it. There were a few students at my flight school that just breezed through it. And I remember trying to compare myself to them, but that's not fair to yourself to do that. So I think definitely making sure you stick with it and stop comparing yourself to others are some things that new students need to remember in aviation.
Well, and it goes on the other side too, right? One of the things that I've seen, like for example, you might end up spending a lot of time practicing those landings. I mean, on our case, just because of where we are, I mean, there's always wind, right? So it's always you're landing with a crosswind, and it's not going to make, like for pretty ones or nice ones, right? And it might take you longer, but in the meantime, you've just got a lot more experience. So you can't compare yourself to, like, yeah, somebody that, yeah, the weather is nicer, and maybe it's always straight, right? And you're just doing those. It's just maybe you're getting something else. Another one that I, so besides that, don't take too long of a breaks, is if there is an opportunity, maybe you don't want to force it, but I had the opportunity to try two or three different instructors just because mine wasn't available. So, maybe instead of shying away from, like, oh, I'm going to wait for my instructor, again, in keeping that, I want to keep a steady pace in training, switching instructors, I found it to be very useful just because you get another perspective. And again, if all you've seen is that one guy and how they teach it, or gal, that's the way that you've seen how things are taught, it might be great, right? Or maybe it's not, and you don't know about it. So getting somebody else, it provides, uh, that's a good comparison, not a bad comparison, to try and see, like, hey, maybe they teach things differently. I get it that way, right? Or maybe now I like it the way that, like my usual instructor explains it. So it's always a good like a different perspective, can be good as well.
Absolutely. It can be very helpful. And I think that's one thing a lot of students struggle with is they think that they are stuck with one instructor that they get, or they're maybe just not into confrontation. So they don't like bringing it up, whether or not you like your instructor or not. If you're struggling with something, it's not going to be bad to fly with somebody else. I loved my instructor. He was amazing. And I was struggling with my landings. So he put me with another instructor and I got him. It's not that he was bad. He was amazing. I learned so much from him, but this other instructor just said something different than he did and it clicked. So never feel bad or guilty with flying with another instructor, because when these pilots are getting their licenses, it's their education, right? Like, it's in their own hands. So take your education in your own hands and make sure that you get the best experience for your money and that you get to where you need to be. So changing instructors is definitely always a good option to try.
I was always nervous doing stalls, right? I love, my instructor was really good. And I'm like, okay, this is how it is. I'm just going to be nervous doing these. He explained them, I do them. And then he wasn't available for like a couple of weeks. I flew with this guy that been flying on the airlines. He was obviously, very experienced. And I was doing them. I told him, like, oh, I'm always nervous when I do this. So bear with me here, right? I'm just rehearsing things. I'm going to do this and that. And he was like, well, here, like, let me show you. He's like, we went up to, I don't know, 4,000 feet. He's like, okay, configure the airplane, stall it. He was like, I don't want you to do anything. Just sit there. And just I stall the airplane and I'm just sitting there. He said, put your hands up. So I put my hands up and then stall the airplane just like, he's like, see? He was like, if you just if you're in doubt, just let it be and you'll be fine. And it just took away that kind of like hesitation that I had, like, oh, it's gonna be all right. Like it's not that I'm gonna mess it up. So it just gave me that level of comfort. And I
Exactly.
was fine after that one, but it was just that like that 1 hour flight. It was amazing.
Those kind of airplanes, they're made to set back into their equilibrium and just find their balance again. It's amazing. They'll oscillate until they're like, okay, this is where I'm back to be. And it's really cool. So just like when you're doing spin training when you're a CFI or for your CFI training, we did those in a Cessna too. You pitch up and you got to try to put that thing into a spin. You really got to pull it back, and once it goes into a spin, you literally just kind of let go of the yoke and she recovers. It's like that's so so they're very very stable planes that you train in. So that's really good that he showed you that. That's a good instructor for sure.
Well, yeah, you're talking about those airplanes, so he had like the stability and that landing gear of taking some punishments.
Do you have any other aspects of flight training that really just stuck with you, whether it was something really good or scary or bad?
I've gotten uh, I've gotten lost a couple times, so and a lot of that, like it was kind of like when I was, right after I got my license, I kind of like I was on my own, and it was that like I'd flown something like a route like many 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 times. It was the only half-hour flight, and I know it. And so I don't know, being calm and not panicking up there, and just like what they tell you, right? Fly the airplane, kind of thing, and everything you'll figure it out. But then when it's more on the flying side than the training itself.
I haven't gotten lost in the plane, but it's impossible these days with the G1000 stuff that I trained with. I'm sure you probably had some steam gauge stuff over there, and it's very easy to get lost in that if you just look away for a second. So I have heard some stories about people getting lost, even on a check ride. I've heard about students getting lost, which that's unfortunate. And at least your day was a nice VFR day. It's a best situation, and you handled it well. It seems like you stayed calm. Things happen. So just remembering to fly the plane is the biggest thing. I was interviewing a DPE once, and he was telling me about a student who was in the plane, and he was like, okay, take me to this airport. And they were locally, like where he trains a lot, and he just couldn't find the airport. So I can imagine the added stress of being on a check ride. I wonder how he would have handled it differently if it was real life and he needed to find the airport. I bet it would have been a little bit easier without the stress of the DP breathing down your neck. So, but good job on handling that.
You mentioned, yeah, this was back the plane that I trained and that I flew. I think it was built in 1970 something. So yeah, gauges. No iPad, no. It was literally with with the map and trying to
Classic.
keep track of things. So it was, like, yeah, good experience, but it was, like enough knowing, like, hey, I'm gonna get a 2,000 feet and contact center here and tell them, hey, can you ping me, because I don't know where I am. Right? That's what.
7,700, find me. I'm
No,
lost.
no, I didn't go that far. I was. I think I was close enough to the airport that I knew that I could reach them. So it was one of those, like, got on the frequency, called tower, and I said, "Hey, I'm close by, but I don't know where I am." And he was like, "Well, why don't you tell me what you see around you?" This was in Indiana. And I'm like, "I don't know, cornfields." Nothing. Is, hey, if you climb a little up and just ident, and they had me on radar. And the timing was that by the time we did all that, I kind of got my bearings around and figure out where I was. So when I started turning, he told me, like, it turns 090. And I'm like, oh man.
Well, that's amazing. I'm going to wrap this up here with going back to your Plane English ARSim app and say that if any of you out there, any of my viewers are struggling with this, then to go check it out because it is really a really good app to help you get those comms down. That's one less thing that you have to worry about when you're up there because there's everything else that I know you're freaking out about, especially when it comes to your solos. If you can get down your comms, then it'll make everything else so much easier. And chair fly the rest of it. So you can chair fly your comms with the app. You can also chair fly everything else, your maneuvers, your takeoffs, your landings, knowing your airspeeds, all of that. So don't take chair flying for granted. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Mr. Mane?
No, no, for sure. I mean, that's it. Yeah, you can find like AR sim. If you just like Google it or whatever, it'll come up. The tool we provide, there are many free lessons. Like in there, you don't even have to create an account. Just download it, and it gives a chance for you to try out. See what it does. Is it for you? Does it do the kind of things that I'm telling you, or like does it work for you, and then decide if you want to keep it for longer. But hopefully it's a good and useful resource, and it helps like it helps you, like Holly said, just get that level of comfort, confidence, and then again, one less thing to think about as you're flying. I love flying. Not being nervous while flying, it's the best because you get to enjoy the rest of it, and this is one of the things that tends to make people nervous. So let's remove that and just have a little bit more fun doing it. So
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, one more thing I do need to add on here, everybody, is that this is not sponsored. We're just doing this to talk about the app and help all you guys, okay? So thank you all for joining us today. Make sure that you go in and rate, review, and follow my podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that little bell there so you get notified of every new episode I put up there. And I will see you next time on here. So have a great week or weekend whenever you're watching this, and we'll see you later, aviators.
bye.